All right, we are having people log on, and it's the wonderful first minute of a webinar where we let people load. I was just joking with my panelists to totally expect me to just sit through this moment, get everyone logged on. Yeah, thank you all for joining. Yeah, so going through. Yeah, thank you for joining us on a Friday. I know that a lot of us, you know, probably took the week off or, you know, maybe a few days around the holidays. So a lot of us might be catching up from work and things like that. So we're glad that we'll be listening in and doing all that. But you know what, as we're getting people logged on, I'm gonna go ahead and give you a little background about Breaking the Glass, introduce myself, and then by then we'll be ready to get going with our panel and hear our lovely topic of STEM women driving innovation. So for those who have not met yet, I'm Elizabeth Lamb. I'm the partnerships manager for Breaking the Glass. Breaking the Glass is a women's career development and diversity and inclusion initiative founded by Computer Futures. Computer Futures is a contract technical recruitment who helps place talent in Salesforce, Adobe, BI, various software development languages, mobile. So if you're looking for contract work or contract talent, we can follow up and I can get you in touch with the right person. So about 5 years ago, the leadership at Computer Futures wanted to make sure that they were impacting gender equity in the tech space in a positive way. So they thought, okay, what can we do beyond just having our recruiters check their unconscious biases, making sure that we're submitting diverse candidates. So they thought, okay, like let's just create spaces where we can have conversation. This first started in the Houston area and it's moved up to Austin. The Breaking the Glass community really blossomed in the Austin community, and from there we've done in-person events at Retail Me Not, Charles Schwab, Accruent, Visa, and it's been really wonderful. This past year, 2020, is our official national launch date, so we are looking to build out communities in New York, DC, and San Francisco. But for the meantime, while we are all at home working in our digital spaces, we are just kind of all over the nation, and I've noticed a few international attendees as well, so that has been a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you for following on and getting involved with the program. I'm gonna submit some links for you to follow our LinkedIn page, get connected with me on LinkedIn, and then from there, just a few like housekeeping rules. If you do have questions, there is a small Q&A box at the bottom. We'd prefer for you to chat any of your questions into that box. So at the end, they're all in one space so that our moderator, Nicole, can read off your questions. We'll get that started around 1:40, and yeah, we'll end right at 2, and it should just be a real pleasant, fun experience. And I'm excited to have us all on the webinar. I'm gonna close my box down now and get it kicked off to Nicole. All right.
Thanks, Elizabeth, and thank you everyone for attending today's session. I really appreciate you all being here to be able to hear from these dynamic set of women, to be able to get insight from them, ask questions to them, and just hear what their career path has been in the digital transformation space. So as I stated, my name's Nicole Phillips. I am the Data Analytics Manager at Cloudflare, but I want to pass it over to our panelists so they can introduce themselves as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Joyce.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joyce Dooley. I am a program manager at the Geekdom co-working space in downtown San Antonio. I have a background as an emerging technologies analyst and a smart cities specialist focusing on civic innovation projects and public-private partnerships through startup activation, as well as through industry education and awareness, primarily focusing on Texas. And I've been on staff at Geekdom for almost 3 years now, but I've been a member since we opened our doors 8 years ago. And it is a co-working space that's dedicated to building San Antonio one startup at a time. It's an immensely community-focused co-working space, and I absolutely love it, and it's completely transformed my life. So it's a real treat to be able to be on staff and give back.
Thanks, Joyce. Allie?
Hi, everyone. My name's Allie Lyles. I am a digital strategy consultant. I've been in the digital space for about 9 years now, consulting primarily from one end of the spectrum, startups, to the other end, Fortune 50. So I'm a hybrid of a digital strategist product manager and digital marketer. And so I've most recently jumped into digital transformation, and last year I was awarded Women in IT Silicon Valley's Digital Transformation Leader of the Year.
Congratulations, yay. Okay, Michael, and you are muted.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Michael Manning. Currently, I'm at Valkyrie AI. We're a science-driven consulting firm that solves organizational and global challenges through AI and machine learning. So I think the digital transformation part is pretty well spelled out there. My background is really pretty exclusively helping raise and scale startups from ideation to their next stage of growth, where I've grown out of a role, or for example, when I was at Rocksauce, selling the company to a bigger parent company and exiting to help out another startup. So my main superpower in the startup realm as it relates to digital transformation is actually marketing. And that is what I'm doing at Valkyrie.
Thank you, Michael. And Janelle?
Hi, everyone. I'm Janelle Guzman. I'm a strategic innovation advisor at USAA on the insurance side. I reside in San Antonio, Texas, and my background includes 15 plus years of experience doing everything from primarily program and project management, business and IT, which includes innovation and the emerging technology space.
Thank you. So thank you all. So when we think about digital transformation, that could mean something different for everyone. So I would like to start with you, Michael, on what does digital transformation mean to you? And I'll go around the panel.
Great. I'm actually glad that you asked me first, because I was like, man, if I go last, I'm just going to say +1 to everything else.
Yes.
But really my take is digital transformation can really mean something different for every organization or individual it touches. The most recent example or industry that I'm like, they could really use a massive transformation. What they do is some of the testing facilities for COVID here in Texas are still using faxes to process results. Now, it's not like a shame on you. It's just the way things are done. There's a whole lot of logistics and compliance issues when it comes to HIPAA. But converting a business from fax to digital doesn't really actually fit every single model. So digital transformation is looking at what could be improved, what systems can actually help an individual or an organization drive their vehicle a little bit faster, get them to their end goal a little bit faster without having too many shortcuts that get in the way of humanizing the product, right?
Thank you. Now, Joyce, I'm going to go ahead to you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, Michael, I agree with you. I'm really glad that I get to go first, because there is a lot of +1s that are going to come out of this conversation. I feel we're all just going to nod and say, yes, that's what's happening. So I was very fortunate to kind of trip into digital transformation as part of my career path, and working in the Internet of Things space from enterprise level all the way down to startup levels, and then now in civic innovation projects. Like, it really does mean something different to everybody else. It could be that you are, digitizing processes, right? Or that you're actually like trying to spin up whole new revenue streams or new models for your business to carry it forward and start leveraging emerging technologies and AR, VR components and AI. And I think that level of customization that comes in at almost every single solution, even if you're in the same industry, it's not a one-to-one copy from business to business or department to department. And so if you really like puzzles and you really like trying to figure out how to make things work within kind of weird squiggly parameters, digital transformation is just one of those fascinating things to pursue, and to help people figure it out, because it is difficult and it is complicated. And even though I've seen more information come out about digital transformation, it's still very hard for people to contextualize it for themselves. And so getting to be helpful and make transformational change through digital innovation is why I'm here.
Thank you. Janelle?
So innovation and digital transformation to me really involves identifying problems, or as we call sometimes opportunities, to really improve a process or a product, which will better serve an organization or its members. very entrepreneurial in nature because even the best ideas still need sponsors, they need funding and things like that in order to bring them to life. So in my current role in the insurance industry, I think you can really pinpoint any industry that's been around for a long time has really deep-rooted processes that made sense, let's say 40 years ago, but take a look at what they truly are today, they no longer make sense at all. So it's really about honing in on what is the issue, what's the problem, and how can we solve it today.
Okay, thanks. And Allie.
So I think one thing worth noting is the reason why some of us get confused by digital transformation is because over the past couple years, it's become very sexy and in vogue to name a lot of efforts, digital transformation, so much so that I was pre-COVID, sitting with a colleague at a coffee shop. He was talking about digital transformation. I was like, wait, what are you talking about? And I was talking about digital transformation. He was like, what are you talking about? And so we have to get level set on the definitions that we use. But I think ultimately in this wide swath, what it comes to is technology, people, and processes. And you cannot have one of the three without having the other two. So arguably, if you only have one, then you're not digital transformation, which is, hot debate. But that's the way I take a look at it.
Well, thank you. And to stay with you, Allie, on this, and then I want everyone to chime in. As we know, because a lot of us have just mentioned about pre-pandemic and now we're in the pandemic. Like you hear some people say, let's just cancel 2020 and go back to 2019. So it's been a year filled of uncertainties. How do you feel about innovation, digital transformation? How does that impact change and influence like diversity and the injustices and social change that's been going on? And how does tech play a role? And to follow up with that, because we're hearing a lot of feedback where there's a gray area on, do you think tech should even play a role in that innovative space of social change or impacting injustices and stuff like that? I would like to hear from you on that.
Wow. I think that a lot of the innovation that we see today, I'll answer it in two parts. So generally, a lot of the innovation that we're seeing today is coming from startups. So a lot of these bigger entities that are sucking up and eating startups, which isn't a bad thing. It gives startups opportunity to have more capital, more resources, and it allows bigger entities to become more nimble. An example of this would be, I think it was BMO Bank, and they ate up a startup where it allowed them to do their loan application processes a lot faster. So when Michael's talking about faxes, it was basically the equivalent of a fax. and so it's Charles Schwab has done this, and it's been a good way for them to innovate and to give options to other people. I think one thing is when we're talking about injustices and kind of what's been going on lately with BLM or Black Lives Matter, a lot of the people that have taken to the streets, technology has arguably worked against them. And so we're talking about Clearview AI, which is a AI platform that basically scrapes the internet so people can see our faces, and a lot of police departments are using it to be able to identify the people who are in the streets, whether it's Charlottesville or DC or whatnot. So that is something to kind of keep in mind, good or bad. The jury's out. Microsoft, Amazon have pulled out of these being associated with these things. But it really does have to do with injustice and how rethinking how we fight for injustice or against injustice.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm going to have a follow-up question for you all about that, but I want to get some input from some of the other panelists on this. Anyone, it's open floor. Jump in.
Well, a more transparent issue, and so I'm on the other side of the spectrum. We were talking about this right before the call, just how innovation is impacting some changes to diversity is that as long as you are entering the room, you know what to say, how to say it, and claim your space. A lot of the time now, it does not matter if you're showing up in whatever you're wearing or what your status or what your class is. I think that the biggest challenge for us moving forward is actually going to be opportunity and giving, providing resources for those who are severely underprivileged because they don't have access to their classrooms, their tech spaces, their mentors, their friends to get, you know, a level up. So that's a whole nother challenge in this new world that we're in. But yeah, that was just another take on it. That is the complete opposite side of the spectrum from what Ali was talking about. But it's a benefit, but it's also not at the same time. You know, I'm thinking about my kids who are very fortunate to have a couple computers in the home. And then I'm thinking about the families that I'm aware of that don't have access to Amazon delivery.
It's okay. It's virtual. We're working from home.
No, but they don't have access to, just like that was right on cue to say Amazon delivery or some of the luxury that I'm very, very privileged to have. So it's making space and creating opportunities so that there's not a whole class that's left behind because all of us have to race forward to be so tech advanced.
Okay, good. And you're going to go into my follow-up question, but I want to hear from Joyce or Janelle. Do you have any feedback on this?
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about, do we think tech has a role or plays a role in diversity and justice, social change, that sort of thing? It's not so much do we think it does, because it does. It does. And then piggybacking on where Ali was going, you know, it's certainly being used today to scrape images, facial recognition, AI. And when we talk about the usages of them by our federal government and police force, lots of organizations using this sort of technology to identify people, and we start talking about protest related incidents, the research shows that Black lives are more subject to false identification. And then when you talk about potentially millions of people being involved in protests all over, you know, throughout the US, and even small error rates can lead to really large numbers of people being flagged or arrested. So it's a really hot topic right now and something that we should all be aware of, even just from the standpoint of knowing what sorts of data that we put out, whether it's through social media or using our cell phones as tracking devices, that add to what's pulled by agencies. So really interesting topic. And again, something everyone should really be aware of.
Thank you. And I appreciate that, because there are times where, like Ali was just saying, that the term digital transformation or innovation has become like a cool, sexy word, like very cliche. Like, and Joyce, I'll go to you on this one. Do we think that we will get to a point where people are using those terms so much, or everyone is trying just to do something that they may be doing a little too much in this whole digital transformation space? And then the floor is open for you all to chime in as well.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, I have watched the Internet of Things space transform over the last 8, almost 9 years now. And it was when I initially got started doing market research for that, it was machine-to-machine communications, which was formerly point-to-point communications. And even though this term Internet of Things was coined in like 95, you know, in 2011, 2012, it was just starting to kind of come about in the industry, you know, and then it wasn't until several years later that I heard a Verizon Hum ad on the radio. And then like we did a smart cities event in San Antonio last summer. That was the first time like publicly there was like 60 something people doing a hackathon type weekend where they were talking about like the terminology will eventually catch up, you know, within the general public space. But because, especially in a time right now where there is a crisis going on, and it's not just a crisis here, it's a pandemic. So everybody is struggling to figure out how to move things forward. It's great in a sense that we finally have reached the tipping point in this industrial revolution where we've been building for so long that now we have to activate on things. So there will probably be amazing results that come from this time period that is going to transform so many industries. there is also probably going to be too much that happens because we feel the pressure and the push to do more.
Mhm.
And what tends to happen is that if you don't have the right people in the room when you make a system, it tends to get kind of established, and then you have a lot of tertiary problems that come as a result. And so when we're being mindful about what we're building and how we're building it, having a diverse team of people involved in thinking about it and doing a lot of, you know, customer discovery and, you know, taking the time to really think about how you're going to build it. Because once it gets put in place, I think whether it's institutionalized or it's in the ether, like it's out in the world and it lives beyond us. Like Facebook is a really great example of something that started off as one thing that is now morphed into something else that's causing a lot of problems and is actually probably dealing with things that it never thought it would do before. And now that it's entrenched in our social structure, it's hard to remove it, and it's also hard to alter it, and it's having some ramifications. And technology does have a role to play, much to Allie's point, is that when you're talking about digital transformation and these things, like you can't have your technology pieces and apply them at scale without thinking about people and processes. And so if you're just making tech solutions and you're not thinking about who will be using them or how it will impact them, then you're not really thinking about it holistically enough, I think, to apply it, particularly at scale.
Great to hear. Does anyone else have any input on that? Follow up?
Joyce, you hit on a really important thing. Something I was thinking through when this question also came up, diverse teams, right? How do you really implement innovation the right way? You start with a diverse team. You know, it's no secret that we all tend to gravitate towards people that are like-minded with us and look like us, right? But in order to have the most creativity and have the best solution at the end of the day, it's by surrounding yourself with people that are not like you. And so that's where you really, truly get the best product and solution.
I would like to add something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Who?
I just like to.
Allie or Michael or Joyce?
Oh, Allie.
Okay. Go ahead, Allie, and then Joyce, I'll come back to you. And
okay.
Michael, you have any input as well. Go ahead, Allie.
Right. So I think when it comes to digital transformation, you know, a customer's expectation is always going to exceed what we can do right now. So like right now, I want an app and I want it now. How come you're taking forever to do it? Give it to me now. And I think one of the things, you know, in this particular time, and we had ladies and I had spoken about it before, is like, what do you plan for? So right now, there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of companies to kind of reset themselves. I mean, in the Great Recession, like back in 2008, WhatsApp, Uber, Slack came out of that. They were birthed during that time. But understanding that customers want everything, and we do want to give them everything, we have to understand that any entity, especially large entities, it's going to take time to do digital transformation. So knowing that you have limited capital, limited resources, limited people, what do you plan for? So one of the things I've been ideating on is like, do you plan for the end of the year and offer people, you know, remote type tools? Or do you plan for January, February, March, when hopefully many of us can go back to the office? So that's kind of what I've been throwing around.
Thank you, Allie. Joyce, did you have something in
Yes,
mind?
Joyce.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. And the conversation has kind of steered a little bit away from my thing, but I wanted to speak to what Michael had pointed out about, you know, like leaning into your differentiators, right? Like in startup culture, you know, what differentiates you is what makes you stand out. And there's so much competition in that space. And so if you are a minority, if you are someone who is typically underrepresented, if you're a young woman or a young man in technology, like one thing that you can do to stand out is to show up and be in that room. That is not to say that it is easy. That is not to say that you are not going to have hardships facing that, but showing up and representing and doing it anyways is one really great way to continue to embrace like what is that makes you different, as well as help push you towards a different level of success or a different kind of success in that space.
Okay, so that leads me to another question based on that input. When you are different, like I'm an African-American woman, Allie is, and you walk into a room, and this is for the floor, and you've done everything you could do to prepare, and you show up. And like you said, there will be hardships, there may be pushback and so on. What role do our counterparts play in advocating for us or supporting us through that?
You know, oftentimes I am in a situation where I'm sitting wondering why do you even have me here, right? So I've actually asked that question just as recently as this past week, where I was presenting this year-long plan for some things I wanted to engage and initiate, and I was getting a lot of pushback from the leadership team. And I just stopped and I asked, you know, I've been working on this and it feels like my work is being pulled apart. I am open to collaborating and having the discussion, but this feedback feels like you're pushing me out of the room. So you hired me because of my diversity of thought and because of my experience. So why am I here? And I had to kind of help them remember why they brought me in the first place. Just because I don't look like you, I don't walk like you, I don't talk like you, does not mean that I can't provide a completely a different frame of reference for not just the internal workings of the company, but also the consumer mindset as well. And it's a position that I constantly have to put myself in, being one in a very diverse team. We have PhDs and scientists. We have folks from like the biz dev world and the marketing world and startups and corporations, and it's not just about like what we are like on the surface, but it also has very much to do of what is inside of us that makes us unique and very, very special. So I would say it's up to our counterparts to consistently remind themselves why they have a strong, diverse makeup on their team, so that their employees and their team members don't always have to feel like it's a challenge to remind themselves why they're there.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping that we do get a point that substance and content is what matters over what is on the surface. But to go to your point about buying, because you said that you felt like, why am I here? And this is to the floor as well. But I'll start with you, Michael, on this. Since our life has changed and we're working remote, how have you been able to get that buy-in in this new way of life? How are you getting leadership to continue to support you and your colleagues and stuff like that?
Yeah, you know, it's really hard. And I think this also plays into some of the challenges that we have in this like insanely accelerated space that we all were just day one, we're all in the office, and the next day we're all virtual. So I have no idea what the body language looks like. I don't know what's going on the other side of the screen. I don't know what mood the CEO is in that day or what other things are going on. Is it the right time to bring this up? We don't know what's going on. So that's a big challenge. But I think that the key for me is that sometimes I'm just so annoyingly persistent that I don't get tired. By the point that I do get tired, I'm ready to move on. But it's not something that gets me very easily. It's not a one size fits all solution. So every individual can or have found a way that they can get their influence across digitally, but it is difficult. It's a difficult road to take for those of us who have worked in office scenarios for like the greater part of the last decade in my experience.
Thanks. Janelle, I want to go to you on that.
Sure. When I think about this question, I apply it to my current role, right? So I'm currently working on 2 long-term emerging technology projects, which earlier, in the last 1 to 2 years, were really prioritized by senior leadership. So I'm at an advantage in current day. However, I think we all have to strive, either continue to strive or step up our communication game. All of our stakeholders are aware of current status of our projects. Any risks that come up, you've got to escalate them quickly and take care of them so that you don't fall by the wayside.
Yes.
And get prioritized.
Allie?
One way that has been very impactful was we've adopted a software called Sococo,
Oh,
and it is actually a fairly local company, I think. I'm not sure, but the interface is such that you can Zoom, you can Google, you can do this, you can do that, but you see little people in an interface like you would see in the building. And so you can see where Joyce is and where Nicole is and Michael is and Janelle is, and you can go into these little rooms and go talk to them. And as silly as it sounds, what that's filling is that water cooler talk void. It's filling the need for that physical space so that I understand, where someone is. And I think the best thing that has actually happened on a separate note is taking the agile methodology approach and doing 15-minute stand-up meetings. So there's
yes.
everyone just real quick, this is what I need, this is what I need, because if we have these long drawn out meetings, people start to say, my kid's doing so such and such down the hall, and I can't do this right now. So you get
Yes.
focused for 15 minutes, and then you can go about your business.
Yes.
Very simple, but yeah.
Yeah. And Joyce, thank you. And I have to look at that call to Coco. I like that.
Yeah, so, there's a couple of things like when thinking about what allies need to do for us, right? Or for people who are struggling and minorities that are often overlooked or underappreciated for their viewpoints or not noticed for all of the work that they bring and their perspective and expertise is, putting them up in the best light. There were conferences that I would go to with one employer where didn't make eye contact with me. I was not introduced to people, and it made for a very uncomfortable dynamic because people didn't know what to do with me on the team. So I learned to have to go be an advocate for myself, which is fine. But finding allies, and there are other leaders in this tech space who have instead, introduced me, made those introductions for me, put me up in the best light. And so I have internalized warm introductions and the connections of people, because they may not always remember who you introduced them to or why, but they could say, you know what, Joyce said that you were amazing, and tell me why. And that alone is a huge barrier overcoming. Like that's immensely helpful to a lot of people, because if you don't have some kind of third party coming in to vet you, especially if you are a minority in the space, whether you're a woman or a young man or a person of color, that LGBTQI, like if you don't have someone helping you navigate that to give you that buffer or that channel for success, it can be very difficult, if not impossible, to overcome by yourself. And then to speak to like how our business has pivoted, we're a co-working space in San Antonio. Geekdom relied on members coming in, and I had been a part of that space for 8 years, where I would see almost the same people almost every single day, and to not have them around was, it was very painful because of the relationships built. And we've closed down for a while, and we've done a phased approach. So we do have some limited use by reservation only. We have lots of COVID-19 policies in place. Masks are required. We're doing temperature checks. So we're having a little bit more human interaction. But what we did as a team to overcome that when we were working from home for the most part is we did Jeopardy, and like we made our own Jeopardy things, and we did trivia days, and we had tried Sococo. There's another tool out there that I just saw that's called Yo Tribe, which is a very similar platform, YOTRIBE. And so we're figuring out how to maybe implement some of those to add that community feel back into our members, because we can't do our Fermented Friday get-togethers. We can't do some of those other things. And so figuring out how to leverage tools to bring that layer back is something we're very passionate about.
Thank you. So Joyce, I'm going to stay with you and go around the room. But one question I have is, what is the best career advice that you have been giving?
So some of the best career advice I got was from this wonderful person named Sarah Brown. She works for Multitech Systems. She's amazing. Anybody who knows Sarah Brown knows that she's phenomenal. And we were at a conference, and I remember we were sitting and having lunch, and she was a bit older than I am, but she looked at me and she said, "You don't understand the power and ability that you have even now." And if I had known that about myself 10, 15 years ago, I would have taken it so much farther. And so for me, I really internalized that. I was 26, 27. maybe, if not a little bit younger. And I ran like hell with it because we give ourselves the permission to chase things. And in our community space, we have a high school student, Caleb Scott, who is one of the co-founders for this platform called Lecturely, and it's going to transform classrooms and through adaptive learning and curriculum. But this is his second startup company within our community, and he is 15, 16 years old. And just recognizing that we are the ones who give ourselves permission to go and be successful and to pursue.
Very true. You have to believe in yourself. Yes. Janelle, I'm going to go to you with that question.
Sure thing. So I remember early in my career, I was speaking with someone. I worked at a federal government headquarters in Washington, D.C., and had someone come in from the field who was there for about a couple weeks, and I had a chance to chat with them. And they were much more senior than I was. And the advice that they gave me really, really stuck with me, and it was, go where the job is. In terms of getting that next promotion, if it means, uprooting yourself and moving somewhere else because that's where the next role is. Because if you sit where you are and wait for the job to open up in your life, you're going to be so many years further behind the person who's willing to make a physical move, right? It can be more challenging, right? As you grow in your career, you also tend to have a family, right? And buy a house, and then you've got to sell a house, and it gets more complicated. But if you apply that principle, you will have more options for your career.
Great. Michael, you're muted.
Yeah, I have a teenager that practices music sporadically. So
I understand.
So actually, I use this example all the time because it stuck with me for so long. But in 2013, I attended a mentor, like face-to-face mentor session at South by Southwest. And my mentor, Nicole Forbes, who is now my counterpart at a competitor in town. To be fair, when I signed up for her mentor thing, she was also my counterpart at a competitor in town.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I am bold. And I'm not ashamed of it, actually. But she told me, as I was trying to grow this startup faster than I even knew how or had the skills, how to just learn as much as I could within the constraints of the time and resources and challenges, because it was more to just be looked at like a toolbox. Whether or not, I work for one company that uses Salesforce or another company that uses a tool called SalesMeet. If I understand the fundamentals of a CRM, then that's going to make me leaps and bounds, more valuable to the organization than say someone who's really, really stuck in a system because they only know what they've been taught. My background, I actually came from food service. And I jumped from food service to customer service, like, telecommunications, straight into marketing for a startup that was just growing aggressively. So I knew nothing. I just used my boundless curiosity and desire to, climb up and help the organization grow. And her one piece of advice, I'm now training some people on my leadership team how to run a Kanban or how to use Slack to communicate with teams. I remember back in the day when I helped my company migrate from HipChat to Slack, and I had no idea how to do that. It was just like, well, we're just going to try, and hopefully we won't delete the archives, y'all. Yeah, so that was my best piece of advice.
Thank you. And Allie.
The best piece of advice I've had as an entrepreneur is to not take the advice you get from friends or family too seriously. Because when I first started off with my wireframes and my app, I'd show my mom. She was like, "Oh, that's the best thing ever." But of course, my mom thinks everything I do is great. So that was kind of one of those things where I had to, which was good because it forced me to seek out advisors and other people who give me more objective opinion that I needed to redo something. So learned that very quickly.
That is good to hear. So now we're going to go in Q&A. I thank you all for all of that good information. I hope that everyone takes it and runs with it and applies it. So let me get into some Q&A for some questions for you all. Okay. Okay, so someone says, totally agree, technology can be used for good or bad, and just it's up to you to be cognizant. Okay, Michael, what did they say when you asked, why am I here? You're muted.
Start over.
Okay.
Honestly, they had to kind of sit on their heels a bit, because when I was brought in, it was pre-COVID, just by a matter of weeks. And so the internal end of year plan had completely changed. I actually appreciated their transparency. They're like, we totally value your insight, your experience, and your expertise. And yes, you are here because of this. However, the reason we're challenging it is because our plans have changed. So it's a two-way street, right? If I'm going to ask a very bold answer, I'm going to expect a very bold response. And so for me, that wasn't really I'm slapping down this plan or this opportunity. It was just, it gave me more insight to pivot and shift my charge for the organization as a whole.
Okay, great. And to Michael, this is like a follow-up, but this seems it's open to the floor as well, that the persistence is an ability that women in business must develop to be heard. To the floor, to Michael, all of you, have you been in that situation? And how did you develop that persistence?
Yeah, so I was adopted very young. My parents were meth addicts, and then I was bounced from home to home. And so I really had to develop some like hard skills just as an individual. I always had a desire to just do better for myself. But I remember when I was applying for my first job, my dream job was to be a barista at Starbucks. That's what I wanted to be when I was a teenager. And I was 15 and a half when I applied. So in California, it's kind of on the edge of, it's probably not going to happen. But what I ended up doing, my grandpa was like, if you want the job, you need to just show up. So this was back in the day when Starbucks did group interviews on like Mondays at 2 p.m. So I would get a release from school and I would just show up to group interviews every single week and participate regardless of whether or not I got called back. And finally the manager got so tired of me showing up that he ended up hiring me, which is great. And I worked for Starbucks for a couple of years. I was a key manager before I was 18. And before I went to college, he actually finally revealed to me the real reason that he hired me is because he was just so annoyed by this young girl who kept showing up and everybody else was like, they ended up getting hired and let go and they just weren't the right fit. And they're like, you know what, like you're going to be on time every day. And that's like the bare minimum of what we need right now. So come on. Yeah. So I would say just find ways where you can start practicing persistence. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to feel like you're annoying, but just find some small ways where you can practice it, whether it's just a daily routine where like at 3:01 p.m. every single day, I'm going to stop and turn off all my devices and send someone an email to remind them about something. Like just find some little ways to practice it to get yourself out of that uncomfortability. It will pay off.
It definitely will. Does anyone have anything to add to that?
I have a similar story to Michael's. So I have this mantra that plays in the back of my mind that's so inherently me. And the statement is, I am nothing if not persistent, right? Like,
oh, nice. I like that.
That's me. And so similarly, Michael, I remember I was an undergraduate student. I had multiple part-time jobs. One was working at an upscale-ish restaurant that was not far from campus. And one day for lunch, this large group came in and it was one of my tables. And I noticed they all pulled out these portfolios that were all the same. And it was the same material that a basketball was made of. And I thought, I bet these people work with the Spurs, right? Like,
yeah, just random.
You make the small connections, right? And, at the right point in time of the lunch, I started a conversation with one of them. And I mentioned that I was looking to start an internship, which was actually a requirement for my degree. And they reached into the portfolio. They had a business card for the HR person, the HR manager. And I said, oh, that's perfect. Thank you. Happy to follow up. And every day, it was probably like on a Monday, I called, I got that person's voicemail, left a message every week, just on, and I thought I'd give them a week, right? I'm not calling every week. But I was certainly consistent. And one day I got a call back, and it wasn't from that person, it was from their assistant. And he basically just said, hey, so my boss wanted me to call you because she really wants you to stop calling her. But it led to the conversation of, okay, so you're interested in internship. Here are the options. What do you think about these? Let's get an interview set up. And it led to my internship with the Spurs and then part-time work into my master's degree. And I worked with them for my first 2.5 years. Great experience. It was in marketing, and which was, a focus of mine. And so it was the perfect thing, but persistence pays off.
Yes, it definitely does. A closed mouth don't get fed. That's a thing. Joyce or Allie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, one thing I've had to work on my career is being persistently vocal as an introvert. And the reason why I was persistent is I was seeing things go out the door that were subpar in group projects. So I worked for Mayor Bloomberg's Office of Media and Entertainment. So it's this huge political office and people are just constantly going back and forth. I brought ideas in my little notebook, but I never shared them. And so I was just like, well, it's okay. Like they got it. And I started seeing things go out to the public, gigantic billboards in Times Square, this and that. And I kept seeing little things like, oh, I wish I had said something about that.
Yeah.
And so I challenged myself at every meeting to say something, to show something that I had done. And it was uncomfortable as an introvert. I didn't like bringing attention to myself, but I got used to it. So over and over again. And the reward that I got in my career, and this happened very early on, but like 10 years later, is that I'm very proud of what I put out there.
Yes.
And so persistence has taught me that.
Yeah. Thank you. And Joyce, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think much like all of the women represented here, I am relentless and kind of obnoxious about it. And I have a twin brother. So growing up, like seeing the differences and, how Richard was encouraged to pursue things. And, there's nothing wrong with that because my mom also made it very clear to me from an early age that I could do hard things and that I had to go and put myself there. And so, I am naturally very extroverted, but it's still at times very uncomfortable for extroverts to go out and be in the world and to do the things. But between that and, doing theater in high school, like it really teaches you the skills that you can then take and a performance that you can bring. And it's authentic because it's you, but it's you in the world, right? Yes. And so between the competitive nature of my youth and the encouragement to go and pursue hard things, I have been constantly challenging myself over the years. And with a facility in a community like Geekdom, which has been at the forefront of my professional career because I've been working out of that space as a member for 8 years. Almost every single job that I have had in the last 8 years has come because I have talked to somebody at Geekdom. And it has led me into amazing things that I never thought I would do. I thought I was going to be an English teacher or speech pathologist. And someone was officing with my former employer who needed a researcher, and I had a 20-minute conversation and I worked with him for a year, and it transformed my life and the trajectory of my degree. And then afterwards I reconnected with that person when he started his firm, and so on and so on. I've done a couple of provisional patent writing projects because of things at Geekdom. I became on staff because I was talking to people. And so getting out there, showing up, and recognizing opportunity when it comes and just saying, yes, I want to do that and I'm going to. And that puts you into a whole other realm than people who are waiting for opportunity to come to them.
And
it can happen through osmosis.
The consistent theme, thank you so much, Joyce, for that, because the consistency I'm seeing or hearing from all of you is complacency is not going to get you anywhere. You have to step outside of your comfort zone in order to push through and go to the next level of your career or whatever it is that you want to do. So I have another question, and this is the last one before we wrap up. What are some key tips you would give for succeeding in the interview process? Because I am a physically disabled woman, but I want to get into tech. Does anyone have any feedback for her?
I feel like right now is the perfect opportunity to potentially get your start, because we're all work from home, right? Everything's virtual.
Yes.
So as long as those communication skills shine through, it becomes more about your abilities and communication than any disability. And it feels like to me that, you know, of course it shouldn't matter, but it feels like all these other things that are going on cast a shadow over disabilities, right? So it's what you can do and what you can offer.
Thank you. That's really good. Substance. That's what it comes down to, your substance. Does anyone else have anything to add before I hand it back over to Elizabeth?
I think that there's lots of ways that you can showcase what your talents are, right? So being able to communicate what you can do is really important, but also with a lot of with GitHub and some of these other online platforms that can really showcase the work that you're doing, whether you're doing creative work or programming work or cybersecurity. I would also tell you to get involved in networking circles. I think, you know, Michael mentioned showing up to entrepreneurial meetups, or somebody else talked about showing up to entrepreneurial meetups pretty aggressively. Go do those things and join webinars, join conversations, see how you can talk to people, because getting jobs is often more about relationships and how you can relate to the people that you're going to work with than about sometimes even your level of expertise or abilities. So that's what I mean.
Also, go ahead, Allie.
Just real quick, one service I've really liked is Lunch Club. It's an AI platform that pairs you with people within your space or outside your space in Austin or throughout the world. So I've met people in Spain, and you have these networking conversations. So what I like is that it basically throws it up in the air, picks someone that you would jive with, and then you meet them.
And who was about to add? Was it Michael or Janelle? Was someone else about to add to that?
And, you know, in situations like this, like we're talking about, you know, attend networking events, but similar to attending this today, start following up with people. Some of our stories, right, and where we work. If any of that interests you, follow up with us, and let's have a one-on-one conversation. Let's see if we can create some connections for you. I'll tell you that attending something similar to this, a similar panel, that's how I met Joyce, and we're buddies now. We're really great colleagues, and we enjoy each other's company outside of the things that we do, right? And we get together as friends and chit chat and have great conversations, and also connect the dots. Yeah.
Thanks, Chanel. So so the questions continue to flood in. I'm going to squeeze one more in. Okay. How would you recommend branding yourself the best way without pigeonholing yourself?
Can I answer this one?
Yeah, of course. It's open floor.
I'm I was looking at this one, and I was going to reach out to Jada if it didn't get answered, but or sorry, not Jada, an anonymous attendee. Jada's the other one that we should probably answer it if someone else feels capable later. But yeah, I think that if you're worried about pigeonholing yourself, you're probably looking at branding maybe in the wrong way. So pardon my bluntness, but if you have a story that you want to share, don't be afraid to have it be an identifier of yourself. There is now more than ever a big identification and a big border between personal and work, and those are now the walls are coming down. So I'm a single mom, I've got 2 kids, I've been divorced, I have all this trauma. Doesn't mean that I can't rock it in a boardroom or advise young startups or be challenged up against a call with Governor Abbott or whatever it may be that I'm doing in my work life. And that is my brand. I am who I am. So in my opinion, and this is mine, take it or leave it, to brand yourself, the only way to do that authentically is actually know yourself and share what makes you shine. So if you're going to start tucking away parts of yourself that aren't aren't meant to be seen, but they're very special to you, it may make it harder for you to brand yourself authentically.
Yes, all about authenticity. And so, to add to that, some of the things that you sometimes may not be the most proud of are the things that will differentiate you, because it shows that you're an overcomer. So also look at that as well. Anyone else want to chime in before we close out? Because we are right on the dot. Okay. Well, thank you all, ladies. This was great. Elizabeth, I am going to pass it over to you now.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I loved everything. It was amazing. I say this at the end of all my webinars, so I'm sorry for people who have had to hear this joke and tidbit many times. I missed the round of applause, so if you're at your desk, if you just want to go on and give our attendees a clap, they definitely deserve it. I loved everything. You know, we were talking about branding ourselves authentically, showing yourself that you shine. I also enjoyed the plug about attending networking events. So, you know, continue to show up to Breaking the Glass events, continue to follow up with these speakers. It is, you know, the way I get connected with everyone is, you know, I do like a hashtag search on LinkedIn. Like, you know, when you're looking for people and you're looking to grow, like that's the way to get involved. We're all kind of hitting this period where we've been in this situation for a while. Don't let this pandemic stop us from like pushing ourselves forward. Particularly for women, our promotion velocity is set up against us. So like, don't let this happen. Continue to network, continue to push yourself out there. I'm gonna send through one more time the link to the Breaking the Glass page. That's the best place to get caught up on where we'll have more webinars and more information. Add the panelists on LinkedIn, and again, just thank you so much for joining us. All these events make me smile and enjoy my job so much. So thank you again. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.